you examining yourself so that you can, and the faith teaches, to be more like Christ and set the example to be more like Christ.
Okay. But if they don't control the exterior actions and the behaviors, the access to certain non-Christ-like things in the area, how are they going to sort of cleanse their heart or become one with God? How are they going to be more like Christ if they don't take actual steps? I mean, I get your analogy when you talk about when a baby comes into the world that they don't know, but there's a book. You know what I'm saying? So when people come to the church and they give themselves to whoever, there's a book. So they don't know, but they can pick up a book and read.
Right, but it takes more than, and we go back to some of the earlier conversations that we had about culture. There is more factors contributing to controlling someone's behavior than just knowledge of, quote unquote, it being right and wrong, especially when you grow up in the church. I mean, a lot of people, they hear things like, well, you don't need to smoke, you don't need to drink, you don't need to have sex before marriage. They don't even ever read those scriptures. They don't even ever understand those passages or the context that they came from. It's very word of mouth. They heard somebody else say it. A lot of times it didn't even come from the pastor. They're not studying for themselves. That's why, I think what caused a lot of issues is because, somebody may be listening to this and hear you say that, well, and then their actions aren't lining up with it. And it's like, okay, well, what are those actions? And then they're letting someone tell them instead of consulting the scripture about it. See, the difference there is you're letting somebody hand you a conviction that you don't have. You know what I'm saying? You're letting somebody feed you mentally, shape your behavior based off what their words are telling you and not necessarily what you believe in your heart. And my thing is, if you don't believe that it's wrong, I'm talking about whooping. You believe that it really helps your child to whoop your child, you're going to whoop your child. No matter whether I feel like Dominique feels like it's right or wrong or it's beneficial or not, you're going to live out your convictions. And for you to listen to Dominique and say, oh, well, since Dominique said it, without doing your own research, your own due diligence, and just go off of what I said, you're now shaping your behavior, trying to be what I call a quote-unquote good parent based off what I said. And that's where it gets muddy.
Okay, now I'm sorry, Brother Mike?
I just wanted to chime in on a couple of things. Basically, there's a prerequisite for any religion. And, in each religion, when you actually get down to the nuts and bolts of it, like, for instance, when you're dealing with Christianity, it says, how do you judge a man? And it's basically saying you judge a man by the fruit that it bears. Right. And by his work and his deeds. So anybody can call himself a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, or whatever the case may be. But it's not by what we say. It's not by the words in our mouths, but it's the deeds that we do that clarify if we are what we say we are. So you can profess whatever you want in your heart, but if it's in your heart, because, again, let's take the Bible. Jesus says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So it's going to show in your actions if you really truly believe that in your heart. So that's what it means by God knows your heart. Doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that you're going to be. It necessarily means that you're good. It just means God really knows what you hide from people. So you could say to someone, oh, I'm this, I'm that, but in your heart you really know that you're not that.
Exactly.
So it's going to always come out in its action. Yeah, Janelle, you had a question.
I got a question.
Yeah. I'm just really confused. So if a person in their heart believes that they have given themselves to Christ and they with it, they all for it and everything like that, but physically, they keep falling prey to all the external distractions that are out there, and they're not making any active steps to prevent those things. So, they're not even trying to fall in line with any type of things that the church implements to assist people to stay in line with Christ-like ways. So how do you explain a person like that? But they feel in their heart that they with God and everything's good,
I think there's just so many factors that go into the analogy, or I guess the scenario that you gave. You'd have to actually list certain things. Are you saying they don't go to church? Or, you know what I'm saying? What are those things that you're saying that they're not doing that a Christian should do?
When they call people down to the altar, there are people who show up and give themselves, and they go through all the whole process, and then they never come back to church again.
but they done, you know, did the conviction. I'm not really sure the terminology.
And in your mind, right, and in your mind, going to church, if you don't go to church, if you're a Christian, then you should go to church.
No, that is not what's in my mind. No, that is not what's in my mind.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
Let's be clear about that.
Right.
No,
what
I said
are those
before,
things that you feel like a Christian
should do? I said before that half of the people in the church ain't really Christian. So people go to church on Sunday, don't make them a Christian. I said that before.
So my question is, what are those things that make you a Christian?
Well, I think you have to say it and walk the walk. And then my other thing I just want to throw in there.
What is those things though? Like, what are those things?
What are what things?
If we
what are those like?
And we ask about like Christianity. This is something that I kind of want to know, and just talking about that whole issue of it being cultural, or it being something that's truly in your heart and truly being a religion. If Christianity is based on Christ's teachings, and Christ's teachings, from what I understand, are to love your neighbor as yourself, do not judge, it's everyone is equal, et cetera, and yet then you have the First Testament, the Old Testament. Ooh, hush my mouth. The Old Testament, which is, in my opinion, very pagan, where, the traditions and the rules and the laws, are based upon ancient, practices like an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and which is completely contradictory to Jesus' teachings and, and just all of this. So my question is, a person who truly considers themselves a Christian, someone who follows Christ, isn't it a contradiction if they follow the Old Testament?
No, they go hand in hand.
Not at all. They
go hand in hand.
If you look at Christ's words himself, Christ said, "I do not come to change the law, but to show the love of the law." So he's basically not coming, but to show the love of the law, meaning to give you the deeper understanding of why this law is in place. So that instead of you just practicing the law, so because you don't want to be guilty of it, that it's so deeply embedded in you and you understand it so much that you have a love relationship for it, so that you don't want to break its heart, just like you don't want to break your loved one's heart. You know what I mean? And you don't want to break that.
And the Bible talks about,
that Jesus consorted with, with low life, like his basic followers were the lowest of society. That's what they say. So do you feel that that's congruent with, his teachings and with the Old Testament as well?
You know what?
Yes.
I think more or less when you look at Jesus and his disciples and so forth, Jesus went to go lift up the downtrodden. And he relates most to the people that have been marginalized. And so each one of his disciples, they were like a motley crew, because usually if a person was going to be selected as a disciple by someone of Jewish descent, they were picked by the so-called tutor, mentor, or the rabbi. And if you weren't picked, then you had to either become a fisherman or you had to pick up a trade. And so when they were called when nobody else wanted them. But Christ wanted them because he saw something inside of them. Just like he sees up in other people, we like, he's a loser, or she's a loser. That's who Christ is looking for, somebody that is, that a person may think is lower than low, but they have a pure heart. And if they have that meeting with them and understand what this whole Christianity thing is about, then a spark will turn into a flame and they'll get busy.
And it's not.
Okay, and you know what? I'm also sorry. Don't mean to cut you off, Dominique, but I'm getting messages from John Macbeth on Facebook, and he's saying those who call themselves Christian but don't follow Christ are not Christians. He says it's more than just accepting Christ.
Thank
you. And he says the Old Testament does not contradict Jesus. It even supports and foretells of Jesus coming. Okay, interesting. Just wanted to throw those Facebook comments.
You got to do more than say it.
Right, but you have to do more than say it, but you got to articulate what those things are, those extra things are. And I think kind of what I hear you saying.
I'm not the one to articulate that, though. The Bible says what you're supposed to do. I'm not the person who governs how Christianity should run. I don't need to articulate that.
You're right. I understand. And I just want to introduce it to the conversation so that we can all be on the same page. Because what I think happened was we started looking at external behaviors, like legalism, meaning, whether you drink or smoke or have sex before marriage. And those
are
things we talk about.
Those are just examples that people were bringing up.
Absolutely. Right, I feel you. And I guess what I'm saying is it's more when Christianity or, quote-unquote, accepting Christ into your life, is not a badge of perfection. It is not, okay, now that I am a Christian, I have to now shed all of these external, quote-unquote, negative behaviors from my life so that I can become a Christian. It is the process of growing to be more like Christ, which we will never reach. And so it's all about living out your convictions. And what those, quote-unquote, things are, how you can identify a Christian, is through, one, their commitment to examining themselves. How much do they? Because we're all falling short. We will not be perfect. Even if the Bible lists these are all the things that you are supposed to do. That's one of the great things about the Old Testament is it shows how man cannot live up. If God set up a standard and a structure, we would fall every single time. That was the whole purpose for sacrifice of Christ, is because we could not fulfill those laws. We needed a perfect sacrifice to fulfill those laws for us.
Can I just add something to that when you're finished, though?
Yeah, and it'll just be 2 more seconds. And the only other thing is that it's not perfection, but it is you. I lost my train of thought. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm sorry.
I'm just so lazy. No, that's okay. That's okay.
What I wanted to say is that, one, there are some simple things. Again, if you go straight from the word of Christ, first and foremost, it's about raising your consciousness. Christ is a title and a consciousness level. So anyone can attain to that because he said this is why he laid down these things as a way. That's why he said he's a way. If you follow this way, then you're going to achieve certain things. And he also said from his own words, greater things you will do than I.
Right.
So he's telling us that the potential for us is there, and it's unlimited potential. And we, too, can achieve the things that he achieved and greater things if only we follow the path that he passed. But another thing he also said, just again, going from the word, it was, if anyone who wishes to be my disciple or a follower of me, then they need to do some things. First thing, they need to deny themselves. Then the second thing he says, pick up your cross. Not anybody else's cross, but your cross, and whatever that cross may be. For you, it's different than what it is for me. So you need to know what that cross is, and you have to pick up your cross and then follow him. So then you have to go through the things and the steps and the things that he went through in order to help himself rise from a certain level to a certain level to a certain level to a certain level to becoming one with the Father. The other thing I wanted to interject into this conversation is that the title Christian was not what Christ was called when he first came on the scene, nor did he ever call himself a Christian. Never did he ever say that. That was someone who called that term came years and years and years and years and years and years later after he was off the scene. So we have to understand what it was that he was teaching us and what the lessons that were supposed to be learned as far as what the whole consciousness